Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Flaws of Persistence Hunting, written by Kira42. Just a quick side note, I do stream 6 days a week on the main channel at GMT+1 at 9 a.m. If you're interested in such things, I would love to see you there. More importantly, let's head on to the story. The Flaws of Persistence Hunting. Professor of Extra Anthropology in Thok looked over his class. An early morning comparative analysis of desperate alien cultures' histories and cultures to look for trends in group psychology tended to attract a mostly pliant set of hangover students who simply needed to pad out their grades, mixed in with the occasional air of a diplomat or a glimmer-skinned youth with delusions of exploring a wild unknown. The works of Professor Vrolvros on how ecological niche predicted outcomes in modern warfare were popular with students because of the vivid accounts of battle that accompanied the statistics and cognitive scans, popular enough to distract the youth from his massive hangover, at any rate. Even if the act of focusing his eyesight past the fourth row of the lecture hall caused his eyes to throb with lances of fire, and the light weight of the datapad caused the dry skin of his tentacles to feel like they was going to slough off, the lecture must go on. For academia, for the next generation, for tenure. So why is it that the persistence hunters inevitably make for underwhelming combatants in modern interspecies warfare? Droned Professor Thok. Persistence hunting creates a psychological bias in favor of wars of attrition and a willingness to engage in ineffective strategies of dubious long-term benefit. Ambush hunting or pursuit predators reward more efficient methods, so species that employ them evolve to improve the quality of their attacks. As progress inevitably causes societies to develop more effective weapons, attrition becomes obsolete, since losses inflicted by advanced weaponry far outstrip the ability to replace troops lost or any value from the temporarily held territory. Said a warbling voice, a clarion perhaps. So that would be Mr. His eyes suffer from a minor spasm as he jerks his gaze to the class roll. Void. It's too early from the year for students to expect him to remember their voices anyway. Correct. This theory was based on the Danusian conflict and the earlier battles of the Third Conclave Separatist conflict. It has since been validated in the 300 years after Professor Volveras published her works by the results of the Fifth Conclave Separatist conflict, the Zrox Wars, and the Ithkaraka incident. Incidentally, the Inkarthraka incident shows that even with massive technological advantage, Volveras postulates holds true. Even the advantage of being the first to develop the Untrahexium warp drives was insufficient to overcome the losses inflicted once the galactic defense fleets were able to create predictive targeting algorithms that allowed the orbital defenses around Inthraka 2 to accurately target invaders. Furthermore, times the electric comment request from the student gallery. The request flashes brown as he approves it on reflex. Speak. Aren't those humans persistence hunters? Really? Really? Come on, read the room. No one goes to a sociology course to ask difficult questions about a species that has barely just left the realm of xenopsychology for extra psychology. What did whoever that was expect? Questions. This wasn't a STEM course. Sure, during this more boring parts of the semester, some students would ask a question or three out of spite or to initiate a joke. But this was Volveras. Everyone loved Volveras. Toning down the brightness on the datapad, Thok said, yes, consensus from the cognitive scans and historical surveys classifies them as persistence hunters. So wasn't the human war against the Fury one that Volveras' postulate would suggest the Fury would have an advantage in, since the Fury had the technological advantage and are pursuit hunters? The human-Fury conflict was a minefield at best. The ceasefires had been signed barely 5 months prior. The Fury colonies were still being subjugated to the missionary fleets of the Road of Torment, ostensibly as a charitable disaster relief effort. But those fanatics had allied with the humans as equals for reasons unknown, so there was obviously something up. The decision of the Galactic Conclave to leave the Fury to their fate was a contentious one, and there had been numerous protests on campus already. The data is yet to be fully analyzed, and the human fleet strategy has yet to be declassified, Thok said, trying to shift the topic back. A liberal arts department is no place for complex debate, after all. Doubly so for one that could lead to a screaming match. Might I weigh in on this? Twanged a voice. Use the electronic comment request alert, snapped Thok. Zzz, 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 zzz. Void it all. Once is enough already, grumbled the professor. I just so happen to be a veteran of that there conflict, said an human voice. The room went quiet. Someone in the front row reflexively made a sign of the gate. A Fury claws unsheathed and several of her classmates tensed up. The loss of the Fury homeworld was a tragedy, further compounded by the casualties of the human attacks and the pandemic. But may the void take him and his ancestors if Prof. Thok allowed a riot to break out in his classroom. Students, need I remind you that this is a place of learning. Many of us lost friends and family in the war, but so did the humans, and now there is peace. So take this as an opportunity to enjoy an unprecedented learning opportunity. Or would you prefer to be served expulsion papers on your hospital beds? Because I guarantee that even if half of the reports are true, the 20 of you are not enough. The room settles back down, and a few clicks are heard as personal stunners are returned to their sheaths. Sir, please explain why you think humanity seems to differ so wildly from what's expected from persistence hunters. Thinking for a moment, Thok hastily adds, without mentioning anything related to recent events. The human fiddled with his auto-translator for a bit, before saying, well, the cognitive scans and statistics stuff from the book seems about right. But the two main differences are that our planet is a bit of a challenge to live on, and for most of our history, our leaders have been scum. The remaining air of violence in the room was vented by that. Some students were double-checking their auto-translator software. Some were hissing with laughter. Who decides to introduce their species and culture with a statement that the leaders are unworthy? Was this some trick? What does having unworthy leaders have to do with persistence hunting? It is pretty much what the book said. We have a psychological tendency towards wars of attrition. But then, when you look at our planet, that void-taken Deathworld was barely habitable even before the Fury glassed the nice bits, snipped a student. Order, shouted Thok. The human continued on. We do end up in wars of attrition a lot. You're all right about that. But when you're on a world as lively as ours, a war of attrition is something special. Not just starvation and dehydration, but weather that'll bake you or freeze you to death. Diseases that'll taint what food or water you've got, or turn any wound you suffer into a slow and gruesome death sentence. Even the clothes on your back and boots on your feet can get infested with vermin. So your wars of attrition are far deadlier and costlier than the baseline of persistence hunter species. Who would even want to wage a large-scale attrition war on a death world? Surely any leader foolish enough to expect their soldiers to suffer such privations would be overthrown and replaced. For example, the Xandri experienced 1,000 centicycles apiece when they overthrew their warlords for unleashing gas weapons in open war. The human's low chuckle cut through the room, evoking primal memories of some beast scavenging a fresh corpse. You see, our leaders are usually idiots, lunatics, or sociopaths. But they are competent enough to quietly deal with any worthy candidates and maintain a good lie or two to string along the gullible. When it comes to war, well, a war just means more money in their pockets and more honor to crow about. Ever feel the guilt of killing some poor bastard that's the same as you, but in the enemy's uniform? Have a look into your enemy's eyes and come to the mutual understanding that neither of you should be there, before they slump over in a pool of blood and his guys open fire at you. A soldier who expressed those sentiments would be a subject to immediate psychological dismissal and trigger a summary investigation of the commanders in the Galactic Navy. Sir, shouldn't you be institutionalized? Asked Thok, hovering a tentacle over the call button for security. I'm normal, said the human. Thok disagreed with the human's definition of normalcy. But if this was how all human soldiers acted, he might as well document what he can before they were all locked away in some mental hospital. Isn't that just an appalling record of meaningless bloodshed? How should that improve your effectiveness as a soldier? Yes, meaningless bloodshed's about right. When you're in a situation like that and you've got nothing to lose, that's power. You might see a guy cast aside his weapon and charge right into the line of fire to pull the injured to safety, climb a burning vehicle stuffed with explosives to cool the weapons, or get tricky or innovate, channel their pain and madness into glory. Then the cycle keeps repeating thanks to the leaders who are completely inept in every single aspect of governance, save retaining power. And each time we got a little more cunning, and our weapons got deadlier, or some new lunatic came out with the woodwork. The room was dead quiet. The student who asked about humans clearly regretted that choice. The weight of being in the same room with a human soldier was like wading through a crime scene strewn with viscera. The mere act of analyzing it only made the thoughts worse. Then those void-headed furgraves showed up in your homeworld and poked the omnicidal maniac armies into killing them instead of each other, snarked some student who was trying to be funny for his own good. Language, there is no need for racism, rebuked Nthok. Honestly, the fairies would have probably had an easy time taking us over if they'd met with the government. Rat bastards would have sold us out for cheap. But the fairies just blasted him right at the start, said the human. So, essentially, your argument is that by killing your leaders and trying to colonize your homeworld, the Fury essentially removed the one thing keeping them safe from humanity, asked Nthok, forgetting his earlier request to keep the discussion in the realm of history. He laughed. Yep, and may God have mercy on their souls. After class, Nthok called the human over and asked, Why are you even here anyway? Are you not of the military? G.I. Bill. Tapping his auto-translator, he asked, A gastrointestinal waterfowl appendage? No. We volunteered to join, and if we serve long enough, we get educational subsidies for our civilian careers. It dawned on him there were going to be a lot more of these GI Bills causing chaos in his lectures once the main forces fully demobilized. He took a shot from a flask hidden in a desk panel. Barely lunchtime, and he already needed it. Woe unto the cruelty of the universe. Humanity are a plague. End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters. Bushmaster 117, Caspar Arnholtz, Draxzoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.